Katera Rising by J.D. Evergreen. Chapter 13. I awake and reach towards the space Lexa had occupied when I fell asleep, only to find her gone, the space in the sheets beside me cold. I groan and rub my face as I drag myself out of bed and look around the small room with confusion. I recall what had brought me here and my eyes dart to my arm. The lines are gone. How long have I slept for? Eldry bustles into the room with a teapot and cups.
Good, you are awake. I was starting to think I would have to wake you.
I watch the woman unload the pot onto a dusty table. How long have I been asleep for?
Almost a day, and you seem better for it.
I nod and take the tea she offers me. Thank you. A whole day? Eldry sits back on the bed Lexa had occupied.
It's not that unusual. Using the gift the first few times will exhaust you, but you will build up a resilience to it. It is like using any muscle. With use, over time, it will build up strength.
I look blankly at her. Eldry sighs.
Think of it like when you first used a sword. I'm sure it was heavy, awkward, and it took time to be able to use it efficiently. Now you pick it up and don't even think about it.
I nod my head. That makes a lot of sense. Eldry rearranges the sheets and blankets on the bed, smoothing them out and tucking them in neatly.
The toll it takes on your physical body with those magical wounds. I have no idea if that will improve.
Well, that took an unwelcome turn. How am I supposed to use this against Emperor Darkmoor if it is going to tear my body apart? I rub my face with my hand and let out a sigh. Eldry peers at me.
It's okay, dear. I'm sure those answers will come clear in time.
This time I am not even surprised she had read my thoughts. I am glad we can trust her. Eldry nods, and we sit quietly for a time and sip our tea. I don't know what is in it, but energy returns to me after I have it. Thank you for allowing us to stay. I should go find Lexa and help the injured. Eldry nods.
Of course.
I rise to my feet and my necklace falls out of my shirt. I pull it off and tuck it into the secret pocket in my pants. I don't need that accidentally going off anytime soon. Eldry nods her approval and I wave goodbye as I exit the room and head over to what I have dubbed the treatment room. Louis eagerly greets me and we set about tending to people's wounds together. Louis by this point is as accomplished as me when it comes to healing, but still he always finds a way to work beside me, chatting the whole time about this and that. He is so mature, sometimes I forget he is only 8. Every day people recover and fewer people require treatment. Soon everyone will be able to return to their tasks and they will have little use for me. I spend my day there, doing my part to help the people who have helped me. The day passes quickly, and before I know it, Lexa taps me on the shoulder, ready to take me to the party. We exit the treatment room and walk through the halls. Lexa is quieter than usual. I poke Lexa in the arm. What's wrong? Lexa looks at me with a weary expression as we turn into the community dormitory.
There has been a problem with the security today. It has me a little preoccupied.
What are we doing? I ask as I follow Lexa through the rows of cots and over to her bed. I thought we were going to the party. Lexa puts on her armor and collects her weapons.
We are. I am just collecting my armor and weapons as a precaution.
I watch Lexa collect her things. Her concern rubs off on me, and I gather mine also. After all, it can't hurt, and now that they are clean and mended, they are actually the nicest thing I own. I move over to my bed and spot the healing cream near my pillow. I must have forgotten to put it away. I collect it and stuff it into my pocket. We head out the door and I touch Lexa's arm lightly. How are you feeling? Lexa sends a small smile my way and my stomach flutters.
Better physically.
She replies,
I do feel my mind will never quiet. It seems to feel the need to bring thoughts to the front of my mind about circumstances I cannot change.
She sighs.
In some ways it is more exhausting than a day of battle.
I fidget with my hands, unsure how to respond to this confession. My mind whirls and I blurt, I know how you feel. I am constantly assaulted by thoughts of Darkmoor, how to free our people, how to use these damn necklaces. Most of all, what will happen if I fail? Lexa stops and takes my hands in hers.
Biffed. We fail.
She corrects. My eyes trace the lines of her face and settle on her emerald green eyes. I swallow, and the sound seems unbelievably loud. Lexa flashes me a smile, revealing straight white teeth.
You should also know I am too stubborn to fail.
Laughter bubbles out unbidden, and I smile for the first time today. Well then, Darkmoor doesn't stand a chance. She squeezes my hands and lets them go. I feel them drop to my side and hang there as we stare silently at one another. Singing floats down the hall and breaks the moment. A clear female voice carries clear, beautiful notes. We walk to the party, and soon the sound of music accompanies the voice. I speed up my pace, eager to reach the sounds of singing people. As we get closer, clapping reaches my ears. I round the corner and get my first look at a party. I take in the sight of people jumping as they dance with one another in the middle of the room. They are all doing the same movements, and I watch in fascination as they all sway together in time with the beat. A small group of people are creating the music near the back of the room. They use an array of implements. 2 have many strings, another seems to be a skin stretched tightly over barrels, and the last appears to be a hollow stick of some sort. Anne stands in the center, singing. Her voice is entrancing and flawless, her song weaving with the sounds of the implements beside her. Together they make a truly wonderful sound. Lexa and I stand for a moment, watching her and the rest of the group. The song ends and we clap enthusiastically. Anne gives the crowd a small bow and steps away as the musical implements pick up a light and bouncy tune. People surround Lexa, eager to greet their leader. I leave her to it and wander towards the dance floor so I can get a better view of the people dancing to the music. I do my best to memorize the dance and work up the courage to join in. A short woman approaches me with 2 cups in her grasp and hands one over to me. For a moment, I don't recognize her. It takes a few seconds to realize the woman with the cups is Tash. She stands across from me, not wearing any of her belts. Without them, she looks so much smaller than what I had grown used to. I smile. Thanks, Tash. She winks at me.
Drink up.
I take a large gulp from the cup in my hand. Big mistake. The drink is disgusting and burns the whole way down my throat. I try to control my face as it involuntarily scrunches up, and I have to work hard to keep the drink from coming back up. Tash laughs, takes a sip, and grimaces at the flavor.
Courtesy of Lucas, it does grow on you, eventually, or at least that's what I have been told.
I take another, much smaller, sip of my drink and valiantly try to keep my face straight as I swallow the horrendous liquid. My eye twitches against my will, and the rest of my face follows suit in response to the offensive drink. Tash laughs and claps me on the back as I choke on the sensation the drink leaves in my throat. Once I recover from the drink, I abandon it on a nearby table. I turn to Tash. Is Lexa the leader of this whole place? Tash nods.
Of course, isn't that obvious?
It's just that she's so young, and there are many people here older than her, I finish lamely.
One here is more capable than Lexa.
Tash states.
And in any case, she is the reason we are all here, in one way or another.
Tash waves her hands enthusiastically as she speaks.
She and her sister Anne discovered this place a few years back and one by one rescued those of us who managed to escape. The people who manage to get themselves out tend to be young adults.
I look at the younger families. People got out with children? Tash shakes her head.
Most of them were born here, but recently Lexa has formed teams to liberate small groups of slaves as they are marched between compounds. It is tricky because it must look like an animal attack or appear as if the group got lost. That is how we acquired some of our families and the elders.
I glance back at Lexa. She truly is a marvelous woman.
Enough shop talk,
Tash declares, dragging me out into the dance floor. Lucas is already in the middle with his glasses and floppy hair bouncing around with each step he takes. Together, the 2 try to teach me the dance. After a few failed attempts, I learn the dance moves and, for the most part, successfully join in. The song comes to an end and the crowd disperses. Melissa walks over to us and holds out 2 belts for Tash. Tash gladly accepts them and straps them over her torso.
And so much better. Thanks, Melissa.
Next time, try not to break the buckles.
Melissa replies with a smirk and snags a drink from a tray being passed around us. Tash rolls her eyes.
Next time I'm hanging from a cliff face trying to fix our security systems, I'll be sure to give my full attention to my belts and any rocks they may be hooked on.
Melissa nods, dismissing Tash's sarcasm, and experimentally sniffs the cup in her hand. She decides it is safe and downs the whole drink in one swift movement. I watch Melissa intently and am disappointed when her face stays neutral. Perhaps Tash is right. Maybe it is possible to get used to the horrendous drink.
Do you know if they got that finished?
Lucas asks, pulling my attention back to the conversation.
They were still working on it when I left. We have guard patrols posted around the perimeter, so we should be okay.
Tash explains, shifting her feet.
I have a bad feeling about it, though. We still don't know why it failed.
The comment sobers everyone's mood. I glance at Tash and clear my throat. Where did you get those belts?
I found them in the storeroom of a house I rigged up with power. They were once used to hold ammunition for guns. That was before Emperor Darkmoor destroyed everyone he could get his hands on. Guns were the only weapon that gave us a fighting chance against his monsters.
Tash spits.
A number of times I could have taken him out if I just had one.
The group nods. The music stops and his friends drag a tall young man with jet black hair out onto the dance floor. A group of people walks around handing out cups of the foul liquid to everyone around the room. I reluctantly take one. Lexa and Anne work their way over to us, both with cups in their hands. I eye the drinks warily. Everyone turns their attention to the young man and his friends. A young blonde woman in a light purple dress addresses the crowd.
As you all probably know, we are here today to celebrate Samuel and the fact he has somehow managed to survive this long. It is a truly amazing feat. Anyone who is familiar with Samuel and his antics knows this to be true.
Laughter and cheers come from the crowd in response to the young woman's remark. Samuel is pushed to stand beside her, and the blush on his cheeks is now so dark I am sure you could fry an egg on it in less than 2 minutes. The blonde woman holds her cup high.
To Samuel, congratulations on surviving 16 winters. May there be many more to come.
To Samuel, I echo with the voices around the crowd, and everyone takes a drink from the cup in their hands, prompting a round of scrunched up faces. A loud explosion rocks the ground beneath our feet, and dirt falls from the ceiling, landing on the heads and shoulders of the people around the room. Melissa and Tash cast accusing looks at Lucas as they brush the dirt from their shoulders. Lucas holds up his hands.
Hey, I love a good explosion as much as the next person, but that wasn't me.
A single piercing scream emits from the hall outside the room, and a thundering crash forces people to hit the ground with their knees. Seconds later, 2 men burst into the room, covered in dirt, sweat, and blood. They hold their weapons ready as they scan the party. Their eyes fall on Lexa, one of the few who managed to stay on their feet. The man brandishes his bloodied sword.
Scarlet Guards. They blew a hole in the roof. There is a whole army of them.
Chaos erupts around us as everyone moves about in panic. Lexa doesn't spare a second before she takes control and efficiently restores order to the chaos. Every available warrior is grouped together and ordered to fend off the invaders. A handful are assigned to protect the children and people who can't fight. Lexa draws her sword, and the few that are armed follow her lead. Everyone else is forced to find something from the room they can use as a weapon. Anne turns to Lexa with wide eyes.
How did they find us?
Nathaniel throws me an accusing stare. I meet his gaze. I won't be blamed for this. Lexa shakes her head.
I have no idea. We covered our tracks, and Claire's too. There is no way they could have found us without help.
I told you.
Nathaniel growls and throws a meaningful glance in my direction. Lexa eyes him.
Do you mean to tell me you haven't had someone following Claire since the moment she came here? I told you not to, but I doubt you listened.
Nathaniel shifts uncomfortably.
She has never been alone.
He grumbles.
I have had someone watching her every minute.
I have been followed? Have I ever had a private moment while I have been here? My eyes flick to Lexa. How much do they know about the time we spent alone together? Lexa takes a deep breath and grips the hilt of her sword until her knuckles whiten.
And did she ever have time to send a message as to our whereabouts?
Nathaniel looks at the ground and shakes his head.
No, Lexa, she hasn't.
Lexa lets out a huff.
Then leave it, Nathaniel. I don't want to hear another accusation thrown at Claire based solely on your dislike of her.
Samuel joins the line of fighters, a kitchen knife in his hand, and his presence puts an end to the conversation, but does nothing to end the tension. Oblivious to what he had just walked in on, Samuel asked,
Shall we meet them in the hall?
Lexa shakes her head and gives Samuel her attention.
Going into the hole will thin out our line, will be easier to pick off. If we stay here, we force them to come in through the door 1 or 2 at a time. Then we can take out more of them.
An unsettling stillness falls over the room. It doesn't take a tactical mind to realize we are trapped. Battle cries can be heard on the other side of the curtain. It won't be long now. Another explosion rocks the room and cracks spread across a wall. A small section about the size of my fist falls to the ground. Air whistles through it. I nudge Lexa and point to the wall. What's on the other side of that? Lexa follows my finger and her eyes widen.
The covens.
She turns to face Nathaniel.
Up at that door. Stop them from getting in for as long as you can.
Nathaniel stomps across the room and lifts the large and extremely rare wooden table, moving it towards the doorway. All the food falls to the floor as he attempts to balance the awkward object on his shoulder. The loud clattering of the stoneware on the floor snaps people out of their daze and they rush to help him. Soon he has the table blocking the entrance to the room and a small army of people holding it in place. Lexa sheathes her sword and moves over to the wall. She kicks at it and the cracks spread. I go over to help her and soon we have a small hole letting in air from the cavern. I wipe sweat from my face as I haul rubble from the hole. How long do you think they will survive out there? Lexa brings her eyes to meet mine.
Longer than they will if they stay in here.
I can't argue with that logic. Pounding at the table draws the room's attention, and I watch as the people struggle to hold it in place. Families huddle together, and Lexa sends 2 armed men through the wall and quickly organizes everyone else to follow them. As people file out, others offer to stay back and fight, some refusing to leave. Lexa manages to persuade most of them to go and protect the others from the horrors of the cavern. Many place their right hand over their chest as they pass Lexa and crawl through the hole into the danger of the cavern. Lexa returns the gesture to every person. Soon all the families have left, along with the elderly. Amda and Eldry shuffle towards us.
Lexa,
Amda asks,
is there anything I can say that will convince you to let us stay?
Lexa gives him a small smile.
You know, we must do everything we can to prevent Emperor Dark Maw from getting his hands on the 2 of you.
He bows his head.
Will you allow us to use our gifts to protect the families and children?
Lexa clenches her jaw and nods once.
Hopefully it will not come to that.
Eldry places her hand on Lexa's forearm.
We have hoped for many things in our long lifetime. However, I learned that hoping isn't always enough.
Lexa shakes her head.
That is not an uplifting piece of wisdom.
Amda crawls through the hole and Eldry pauses.
Sometimes a hurtful truth is more empowering than a comforting lie.
With that, she starts to climb through the hole. I grab her arm. Wait. Can you and Amda use your gift to seal this hole? Eldry shakes her head thoughtfully.
We cannot seal it, but
Amda pops his head through the hole.
we can make it look like there isn't a hole there. Of course, it won't stop the wind or anything passing through it.
Lexa looks between the 3 of us, something akin to relief spreading across her defined features.
Yes, please, do it.
The elders nod and with help squeeze back through the hole. Within moments, the hole fills and looks like it was never there. Only the wind blowing occasionally through it gives any hint that something is amiss. Lexa lets out a long sigh. Only a small group of people remain, and we begin herding them towards the gap in the wall. They eye the solid-looking wall, but trust us when we encourage them to go through. Soon, only the people holding the table to the door and a few others are left. Nathaniel grunts and shifts over, taking most of the weight of the pounding guards on the other side.
Go.
He grunts. People cast him a thankful glance and rush towards us and the gap in the wall. Another explosion rocks the room and a section of the roof caves in. Someone grabs my hand and I am tugged backwards as a ton of rock falls where I had been moments before. Dust fills the room and I can hear coughing and moaning. A few moments and the dust begins to settle, revealing a horror story of people who didn't make it away from the falling rocks in time, and a wall of rubble blocking our makeshift exit. There is a heavy silence as everyone realizes no one else will be leaving that way. The moaning continues. It is coming from the pile of rubble. I rush forward and begin shifting rocks. A few others, including Lexa, hurry to help. Our efforts reveal a twitching hand and I reach for it. The hand twitches and holds my back. "They're alive!" I call out, my heart thumping in my chest. Another explosion rocks the room, and more rocks fall from the ceiling. I tumble backwards and roll, covering my head. My arms and back sting as I am pelted by rocks as they scatter everywhere. When the dust settles this time, the moaning and the hand are gone. I stare at the space where the hand was and struggle to comprehend the large rocks now in its place. Guards pound at the door, and Lexa puts a hand on my shoulder.
"You did what you could. Now we must help the living."
I swallow and nod, a sickness building in my stomach. With no other option, the remaining people prepare to hold the Scarlet Guards off for as long as possible. Hopefully we can distract them for long enough for the others to make it to safety. Before the guards realize the rest of the rebel base is empty, Lexa regroups the line, readying them for when the guards inevitably make it through the door. The pounding at the table blockade stops, and silence settles over the room. A quiet hiss comes from the other side of the doorway. Lucas's eyes widen and he bellows,
"Get away from the door."
Spurred by the panic in Lucas's voice, everyone jumps away as it explodes back into the room. Splinters of wood fly around the area and embed themselves in walls and flesh. A sharp sting in my arm tells me I wasn't spared by the projectile table. I stumble backwards over a young man staring at the roof, unblinking, a wooden projectile lodged in his neck. Scarlet Guards swarmed the room. Through the doorway they had widened with their explosives, each of them clad in full armor. These are not the Scarlet Guards I am used to seeing. These guards are fit and well trained with their weapons, very different from the ones who guard the docile slaves. We fly into battle and manage to take out the first wave without any further casualties. We don't get time to celebrate as a second group swarms through the door, closely followed by a third. This group seems better prepared, and they take us out one by one. I stab at my opponent and pull my sword from the guard in front of me, and he falls to his knees. Another takes his place before my opponent has taken his last breath. Lexa beside me fights off two attackers, her sword swinging in a graceful blur. I can't do anything to help her as my new opponent swings a massive axe. I dodge and kick him in the stomach, then using the butt of my sword, I slam it into the back of his fist and knock his weapon from his hands. After that, he is quickly dispatched. I get a rare moment to look around the room. Our numbers have been reduced to less than 20. We are overwhelmed, and the waves of guards are endless, and each wave of guards are fresh and ready to fight. We, on the other hand, are tiring after fighting off wave after wave. My arms are heavy, and the sword in my hand is slippery with sweat and blood. Our only hope is that the others have long enough to make it to safety, or at least far enough into the cavern that they aren't easily followed by the guards. That would make our sacrifice worth it. Another massive explosion rocks the room, and deep cracks form haphazardly across the roof as it threatens to repeat the rockfall only minutes ago. Anne appears next to Lexa and pushes her back towards a small room away from the swarming guards. I am collected by Tash, who pulls me in the same direction. Lexa looks about in confusion.
"And what are you doing? Wait."
Anne pushes Lexa to the back of the room with the help of Melissa and Tash.
"There you must go. There are too many. Your mission is too important. If you stay, they will kill you."
Anne pushes us into a small storeroom attached to the chamber that hosted the party. The room is filled with several sacks containing large red grains. Lexa tries to dodge her sister as she blocks her from joining the fight.
"Let me out. My people need me to fight, not to cower and run."
Lexa bellows. Anne doesn't back down.
"No, Lexa. They need you to leave and go on the mission that will free them. The Scarlet Force is too big and we are unprepared. Our only hope is the mission.
I glance back as Melissa and Lucas are frantically pulling the sacks of grain away from the wall. An opening peeks out around the remaining sacks of grain. Melissa pushes her fingers into a crack, and together she, Tash, and Lucas pull the rock aside. A tunnel comes into view. They knew this was here. Why didn't they send the people out this way earlier? Lexa somehow manages to dart around her sister. She takes a single step out into the chaos and is scooped up by a giant man who brings her back into the room. Lexa huffs and growls.
Nathaniel, put me down.
Nathaniel ignores Lexa's demands and faces Anne.
Take the tunnel and go. Get her as far away from here as you can. Don't let her come back.
Nathaniel nods and heads for the tunnel. As his massive frame moves forward, I gain a clear view of the other side of the doorway. I watch in horror as Scarlet Guards cut down the people around them. The people fight back, but most of them are using makeshift weapons, and the guards bring them down easily. Samuel and his friends light a wooden barrel, one that housed the alcohol Lucas made, and together they throw it at a group of Scarlet Guards. The explosion as the barrel hits the ground is so violent people are thrown backward and numerous fires start around the room. Samuel and his friends take advantage of this and descend on the dazed guards, using kitchen knives from the buffet table and large shards of broken stoneware to stop them from rising. I call out as a guard comes up behind Samuel and swings his sword at the birthday boy. My voice is lost in the screams, and I can do nothing to help him. The guard's sword meets the boy's flesh just below the knee. It cuts his right leg clean from his body. Samuel falls to the ground and rolls, punching his knife through the gap in the guard's armor, slipping his blade easily between the man's stomach and his pants. The guard clutches his gut and falls with a cry. Hands grasp my arms and drag me away from the awful scene, a scene I know will be burned into my memory for as long as I live. Lucas pulls me towards the tunnel. I follow him, but my question bursts through my lips. Why didn't we send everyone else this way? Lucas gives me a grim expression.
Because we wanted them to live.
I stare into the narrow tunnel. What is so bad that they didn't want to send anyone down here? I don't get long to think about it as Lucas forces me into the narrow space. I have to enter sideways, but the tunnel behind the opening appears to be a little wider. Nathaniel is already in here, and it looks like it is taking all his effort to keep Lexa inside the tunnel. Melissa stands behind Nathaniel, thwarting Lexa's efforts to dart around him and return to the fight. Anne pushes Tash into the tunnel and removes one of the round bolts from her belt. A guard rushes into the room towards Anne. She draws her dagger and stabs him in the throat as he lifts his heavy mace over his head. The guard falls to the ground, clutching his throat, and his mace hits the ground next to him. The guard twitches for a moment before he stops moving altogether. I look at Anne in amazement. That was more skill than I had expected. I shouldn't have been surprised. Lex is her sister. More guards flow into the celebration room behind her. Their numbers are endless. Anne is right, no one will make it out alive. But the way Lucas had answered my question makes me suspect the way we are going doesn't hold much hope either. Anne squeezes the ball in her hand, and a blue light shines through her fingers.
Anne, no.
Lexa cries, the battle forgotten as she desperately tries to get to her sister and the glowing ball in her hand. Lexa's attempts at reaching her sister are so strong, Lucas has to join the group holding her back. The three of them struggle to keep her in place. Tush indicates to the glowing orb in Anne's hand.
Anne, you need to be far away by the time that turns red.
I have to make sure this entrance is destroyed. It will delay them following you. Now. Go.
Anne states, making no indication she will be moving away before she completes her goal. The light in her hand turns purple, and it takes mere seconds to become red. Guards flow into the storeroom and approach Anne. Anne ignores them and looks at Lexa.
I'm sorry.
She throws the red ball to the ground, and the world around us explodes. Everything rattles, and the explosion is deafening. My ears ring. Disoriented, I stumble back into Lucas, who is standing behind me. Small rocks pelt my face and arms as they rocket away from the explosion. Strong hands grip my forearms and shove me away from the falling rocks. It takes a moment for me to realize those hands belong to Melissa. Rocks fall around us, effectively blocking the only way back. The only light in the tunnel comes from the remaining balls on Tasha's belt. their eerie glow lighting up faces of the group in unfamiliar ways. I glance at Lexa. Tears run down her face as she runs to the pile of rocks that had been the entrance to the tunnel only moments earlier. She desperately pulls at the rocks, attempting to dislodge them so she can get to the other side. My heart thuds in sympathy to her pain. The narrow tunnel around us rumbles as Lexa manages to move a large rock from the top of the pile. Lexa freezes as she realizes bringing down the wall between her and her sister will collapse the tunnel. Nathaniel walks up to her and gently turns Lexa in the direction we need to go. Releasing his hold on her, he steps back, giving her much-needed space. Lexa closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. She takes one last glance at the collapsed opening and clenches her jaw.
Let's go.
With that, she runs down the tunnel and everyone follows close in pursuit. We run for a time in near darkness. My limbs are heavy and uncooperative as I stumble more than once. Finally, a small speck of light can be seen down the tunnel. An exit from the suffocating black draws near, giving me the motivation to keep my burning muscles moving. Light from the end of the tunnel grows steadily bigger with each step. Every ragged breath makes my lungs burn as if they are on fire. The light up ahead is unusual. It has a strange blue tinge to it. A tough wire gate blocks our way out of the tunnel, and we slow as we approach it. Lexa looks at the lock for a moment and tugs it. The lock holds firm and clatters loudly around the tunnel. Lexa looks at the group.
Can you open it, Tash?
Tash moves forward, looks at the lock carefully for a minute and stuffs something into it. She pulls a rock from a pouch on more of her many belts and runs her knife along it. Sparks jump off the stone and towards the lock. Something fizzes for a moment and the smouldering lock pops open. Lexa pulls the gate open and it groans like it hasn't been moved in decades. Finally, we break free of the tunnel and stumble out of the exit, pausing for the first time since we started running to catch our breath. Once I have returned enough air to my lungs, I examine the world around me. Giant mushrooms completely surround us, taller than anything I have ever seen before. As tall as they are, the thing about them that holds my attention is not the massive height, but that they all emit a soft blue light. The world around them glows. The mushroom forest somehow holds the inky darkness of the cavern at bay. Caught up for a moment in the eerie beauty of the scenery around me, I almost forget what had brought us here. Almost. I look around at the group of people surrounding me. Lucas and Tash stand in awe, staring up at the mushrooms around us. Melissa and Nathaniel seem to be having a competition to see who can look the least puffed out. Neither of them are doing a convincing job. Lexa stands off to the side, her cheeks flushed and streaked with dried tears. She wraps her arms around herself, and I fight the impulse to go over to her. Space is what she needs now. Everyone's adrenaline dies off and quiet settles amongst us. The very real feeling of pain settles on our shoulders as we all register that we left good people to die. Not that our staying would have really made a difference. Perhaps it would have prolonged it for a time. I sink to my knees and stare at the ground. My shoulders slump, and I bury my face in my hands, trying to hide from the brutal memories that flash to the front of my mind. My necklace falls forward and sparkles in the eerie glow of the mushrooms. It must have worked its way out of my shirt during the fighting. I grasp it. This is why we left. This is what we fight for. This is the journey we were preparing for, and even though it had begun with a rocky start, we must see it to the end. I climb to my feet and clear my throat. Where do we go from here? The group turns to look at me. Their faces are a mixture of sadness, confusion, and disbelief over the events that have transpired. Their bloodied clothing and skin are testaments of the pain they carry in their hearts. Lexa takes a deep breath and resumes command.
We go to Erast.
That was intense. Explosions, betrayals, and now a glowing mushroom forest? Things just keep getting wilder. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. New chapters drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And tell me in the comments, what would be worse, getting caught in a Scarlet Guard ambush or having to drink Lucas's absolutely horrendous mystery brew? Let me know. See you next chapter, if we survive.